We are halfway through chapter 18, 19, some number. 21, I was really off. And Jen has been telling Luke all about the rules and why they have the population law. And Luke is still very confused, which I don't blame him. So here we go. Jen says that all of the ladies who are going to have a baby have to hide because they're not allowed to go out in public. She says, hiding like us, you mean? Jen asked, but she took the distraction. Lots of them pretend they're just getting fat. My mom said she went shopping the day before I was born and nobody noticed. But that's my mom and shopping. And then she was off on a tale about her mother taking Jen shopping in a city 10 hours away, just because she'd heard a store sold good purses there. That's probably the only reason my brothers don't turn me in, Jen said. If she didn't have me, my mother would drag them around shopping. Can you see those two gorillas with shopping bags? Jen did an impression walking around with her arms dragging from imaginary loaded down bags. Even though Luke had only seen her brothers from a distance, he caught the resemblance and laughed. Your brothers would never turn you in, he protested, would they? Of course not, Jen said. They love me. She hugged herself mockingly and flopped back onto the couch beside Luke. Anyhow, they wouldn't be smart enough to figure out how to turn me in without getting the rest of the family in trouble. What about your brothers? They're not stupid, Luke said defensively. Or do you mean, would they ever betray you? Jen narrowed her eyes, truly curious. Not now necessarily, but say years from now, if your parents were dead and it wouldn't hurt anybody but you and they'd get lots of money for it? It was a question Luke had never considered, but he knew the answer. Never, he said, his voice cracking with earnestness. I can trust them. I mean, we grew up together. It was strange how he could be so sure, because they barely took time even to tease him anymore. Matthew was getting very serious with his girlfriend and spent every spare moment at her house. Mark had suddenly gone basketball crazy and talked to Dad into nailing an old tire rim to the front of the barn for a hoop. Luke could hear him outside throwing balls late into the night. No matter how certain he was of their loyalty, Luke sometimes felt like his brothers had outgrown him. He missed them. But it didn't matter. He had Jen now. Luke kept Jen from talking about the rally the rest of the day, and they didn't even go near the computer. They just had fun. He crawled back to his house a few hours later thinking that he didn't mind at all anymore having to hide. He could go on this way forever, as long as he got to visit Jen. The leaves would come back to the trees soon, and he'd feel even safer on his trips to her house. And when planting season started, Dad would be out in the fields all day, and Luke could see Jen all the time. But April came before planting season. Remember, April is when Jen wants to have her rally. Chapter 22. It rained the first 2 weeks of April, and Luke was in a tizzy wondering when he would ever get to see Jen again. Finally, the ground dried out, and Dad headed out to the fields to plow. Luke raced to Jen's house. Oh, good, she greeted him. You can get the advanced battle plans. I was afraid we were just going to have to pick you up Thursday night and fill you in then. Luke carefully... Excuse me. Luke carefully slid the door shut behind him and straightened the blinds so he and Jen would be totally hidden. Then he turned to face her. What are you talking about? He asked. But he knew. His heart began to thump harder than it had in his rush through the backyards. The rally, of course, Jen said impatiently. Everything's set. I'm taking one of my parents' cars, and I'm picking up 3 other kids on my way. But I made sure there'd be room for you. You should feel lucky. Lots of kids are just going to walk. We're all meeting at the president's house at 6 a.m. Luke clutched the cord to the blinds. Do you know how to drive? He asked. Well enough. She flashed him a wicked grin. My brothers told me how. Come on. She waved him over to the couch. He sank into it while Jen perched on the edge. What if the population police stop you before you get to the Capitol? He asked. Us, you mean? We. You're going to, remember. Don't worry, nobody will stop us, she giggled. I checked the national employee staffing schedules through the computer. Let's just say several of the population police got some unexpected days off. You mean you changed their schedules? You can do that? Jen nodded, a wicked gleam in her eye. It took me a whole month to figure out how, but you are now looking at an accomplished hacker. Dimly, Luke realized why Jen had seemed so relaxed and happy on his last several visits. They'd been vacations for her, breaks from intense work on plans for the rally. He looked closer and saw the fatigue in her eyes, tiredness. She looked like a younger version of Mom after a 12-hour shift in the chicken factory, or Dad after a long day of baling hay. But there was something more in her expression. His parents had never looked so feverishly giddy. What if someone finds out what you did and changes it back? Jen shook her head. They won't. I was very selective. I coordinated everyone's travels plans and only eliminated the police who had to be eliminated. Aren't you excited? We're going to be free after all these years. She leaned down and pulled a sheaf of paper out from under the couch. Best hiding place in the world. The maid's too lazy to clean under there. Now, let's see. I'll pick you up at 10 p.m. and Luke was glad he was looking at the papers instead of she was looking at the papers instead of him. He wouldn't have been able to meet her eyes. Do you think he's gonna go? I mean, he never said yes. He's never said no either. Okay, so nobody's going to be caught on the way to the Capitol. But once you're there at the, oh, wrong kid. Okay, so nobody's going to be caught on the way to the Capitol, but once you're there at the president's house, someone will call the population police. And then Luke felt panicky just thinking about it. Jen wasn't fazed. So what? She asked. I don't care who gets called once we're there. Heck, I may call the population police myself. They're not going to do anything to a crowd of 1,000, especially not when lots of us are related to government officials. We'll make them listen to us. We're a revolution. Luke looked away. But your friends, you were mad at them because they weren't into it. What if they don't show up? What do you mean? Jen's voice was fierce. Luke could barely speak for the panic welling inside him. In the chat room, they were making jokes. Carlos and Sean and the others. You said they weren't taking it seriously. Oh, that. That was a long time ago. They're all on board. They're psyched. Wait, Carlos is my lieutenant in all of this. You wouldn't believe how much he's helped. So, okay, 10 o'clock, and then it's 8 hours to the Capitol, and she consulted her papers again. What kind of sign do you want to carry? I deserve life, or end the population law now, or this is one I found in an old book. Give me liberty or give me death. Luke tried to imagine what Jen seemed to be taking for granted. He could get in a car. He'd sat in the pickup in the barn. A car wasn't much different. And for 8 hours, that would be all he had to do. Sit. Not that difficult. Except that panic would be coursing through him for the entire 8 hours because of where the car was going. And then to get out in public at the president's house and carry a sign. His imagination failed. He broke out in a cold sweat. Jen, he started. Yes? Jen waited. The silence between them seemed to be growing like a balloon. Luke struggled to speak. I can't go. Jen gaped at him. I can't, he said again weakly. Jen shook her head briskly. Yes, you can, she said. I know you're scared. Who isn't? But this is important. Do you want to hide all your life, or do you want to change history? Luke made a stab at humor. Isn't there another choice? Jen didn't laugh. She sprang from the couch. Another choice! Another choice! She paced, then jerked back to face Luke. Sure, you can be a coward and hope someone else changes the world for you. You can hide up in that attic of yours until someone knocks on your door and says, oh yeah, they freed the hidden. Want to come out? Is that what you want? Luke didn't answer. You've got to come, Luke, or you'll hate yourself the rest of your life. When you don't have to hide anymore, even years from now, there'll always be some small part of you whispering, I don't deserve this. I didn't fight for it. I'm not worth it. And you are, Luke. You are. You're smart and funny and nice, and you should be living life instead of being buried alive in that old house of yours. Maybe I just don't mind hiding as much as you do, Luke whispered. Jen faced him squarely, her gaze unwavering. Yes, you do. You hate walls as much as I do, maybe more. Have you ever listened to yourself? Every time you talk about how you used to go outdoors and work in the garden or something, you glow, you're alive. Even if you don't want anything else, don't you want to get the outdoors back? What Luke wanted was to get away from Jen because she was right. Everything she said was right. But that couldn't mean he had to go. He huddled deeper in the couch. I'm not brave like you, he said. Jen grabbed his shoulders and peered into his eyes. Oh yeah, she said. You dared to come over here, didn't you? And here's something. Why are you always the one who makes the trip? Ever think of that? If I'm so much braver, how come I'm not risking my life to see you? There were 1,000 answers to that. Because I found you first, because your house is safer than mine, because I need you more than you need me. You've got your computer and all your chat room friends, and you go places. Luke squirmed away. My dad hangs around my house too much, he said. It's safer this way. I'm just protecting you. Jen backed up. Thanks for the chivalry, she said bitingly. I've got enough people protecting me. If you care so much, why don't you help me get free? You say you won't come to the rally for yourself, so do it for me. That's all I'll ever ask of you. Luke winced. When she put things that way, how could he not go? Except he couldn't. You're crazy, he said. I can't go. And neither should you. It's too dangerous. Jen flashed him a look of pure disgust. You can leave now, she said coldly. I don't have time for you. Luke could feel the ice in her words. He stood up. But go, Jen said. Luke stumbled toward the door. He stopped by the blinds and turned around. Jen, can't you understand? I do want it to work. I hope. Hope doesn't mean anything, Jen snapped. Action's the only thing that counts. Luke backed out the door. He stood on the Talbots' patio, blinking in the sunlight, breathing in the smell of fresh air and danger. Then he turned and ran home. Chapter 23. It's really short. Luke let the kitchen door slam behind him and didn't care. He was so mad, his eyes blurred. The nerve of her saying, I don't have time for you. Who did she think she was? He tramped up the stairs. She'd always thought she was better than him just because she was a baron, showing off with her soda and her potato chips and her fancy computer. So what? It didn't mean she was special, just because her parents had lots of money. It wasn't like she'd earned it or anything. Who was she anyway? Just some dumb old girl. He wished he'd never gone over there. All she did was brag, 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 and show off. That's all she really was anyhow, showing off. Hey, look, I'm a third child, and I can go to the president's house and nobody will hurt me. He hoped someone shot her. That would show her. Luke stopped in the middle of pulling the attic door shut behind him. No, no. He took it back. He didn't want anyone to shoot her. His knees went weak, and he had to sit down on the stairs. All his anger suddenly turned to fear. What if someone did shoot her? He remembered the sign she'd asked if he wanted to carry. Give me liberty or give me death. Was she serious? Did she expect to... He stopped himself from thinking the rest. What if she never came back? He should go, if only to protect Jen. But he couldn't. Luke buried his face in his hands, trying to hide from his own thoughts. Mother found him there, hours later, still crouched on the stairs. Luke, were you getting impatient, waiting for me to get home? Did you have a nice day? Luke stared at her as though she were a vision from another life. He started, ready to spill everything. He couldn't hold it all in. Mother felt his forehead. Are you sick? You're so pale. I worry about you, Luke, all day long. But then I remind myself you're safe here at home, out of harm's way. She gave him a weary smile and ruffled his hair. Luke swallowed hard and recovered himself. What was he thinking? He couldn't tell anyone about Jen. He couldn't betray her. I'm fine, he lied. I just haven't been out in the sun for a while, remember? Not that I'm complaining, of course, he added hastily. Hiding again. That's where we're stopping today. We are ready for chapter 24, and we'll have to see what happens with Jen and with Luke. What do you think? Is Jen really going to go? And is Luke going to make up his mind? Is he going? Is he staying? It seems like he just doesn't know. What do you think's going to happen?